Hi, my name is Chris Freeman. I am trying to create a review for students for the AP exam. We are right now in the second part of the living world. So I'm talking through some content here, and as you can see in this image on the screen, we are getting ready to talk about food pyramids and how energy transfers from primary producers up through consumers. So as sun hits plants, you can look at that pretty rose there, you have 1% energy transfer into that. So you need a lot of plants to establish the base of any food pyramid that's going to have multiple levels. And so here we have a nice wide base, and we're looking at the energy as it transfers up. And what's important for you to notice is that 10% energy, once the sun gets into the plant and we have primary production because of photosynthesis, once that's through, every other level has 10% energy transfer. So pretty much on the AP exam, you should only expect to see this idea of 10%, 10%, 10%, 10% moving up the trophic pyramid. It is good to be aware that photosynthesis is only 1% efficient, but the sun certainly shines every day, so we can expect that plants will be able to go on with their photosynthesis. But in a food pyramid, every level within that food pyramid, going from one level to the next, you have 10% efficiency. So you need a real wide base to get a much smaller amount of organisms above it. That sort of makes sense. I eat a lot of food, and I'm just one person. So I need more food to sustain me than there are of me. And so it makes sense that this cricket here, you're going to need more roses than the cricket, and only 10% of energy is transferred in that food interaction there. The cricket has to breathe. The cricket has to move around to find its food, and there's due to the second law of thermodynamics, right? Energy lost to the system, and it's a lot of energy lost. 90% of the energy is lost there. So as we go to primary consumers, these are going to be your vegetarians. They're going to eat the plants, and then we have, say in this example, mice that might be munching on some crickets if they can catch them, and only 10% of the energy transfers there. So we can look at our energy loss. We can think about what that looks like, and then we work our way up to the very top. We have a tertiary consumer. You really don't get much more than that. And the reason for that is because it's just too hard to get a wide enough base to go much beyond that. There wouldn't be enough organisms to have a healthy stock where you wouldn't be worried about inbreeding. So, the top consumer, there's very few of them because there's just not enough energy from what they're feeding on to support them. As you can see, there's just not enough energy to go to the next level there, so it ends there at that top consumer. So there you have it. That's that's energy transfer through that system on a food pyramid, and it's important to realize that we're up here, and as human population continues to grow, we might want to be thinking about what can we do? How can we reduce our it will expand our population while reducing our footprint. And one thing that we could do is all become vegetarians, or just simply eat at a lower trophic level. Maybe we'll just eat a bunch of bugs instead. And if we do that, then we no longer have to grow a lot of plants for the animals that we're eating. So we could essentially wipe all the animals that we would be thinking about eating in farms off the face of the earth, just knock them out of there and no longer feed them. And then we can reduce the size of our farms that we're growing for food, just for people. And even though we're going to have to eat a lot more vegetables to stay healthy, we will be eating at a lower trophic level, so we don't have all this energy lost to the system, and so you have much more land that will be able to be utilized to give back to ecosystems and that sort of thing, or just to allow more people to grow. So that's something to consider there. Not saying that we should all become vegetarians, but that's certainly a factor as you're thinking through the test. Hey, how do we sustain a growing population? Well, we could all become vegetarians or vegans, and that could be a way of going about doing things. So I want to also, let me jump back here for a second before I forget. Um, when we say the words primary producers, you should also think autotrophs. When we think about organisms that are going to be eating other organisms, you can think heterotrophs. So those are just some other terminology that we want to think about here as well. So primary and secondary succession are important to think about. Primary succession is when you essentially start with a rock, and then you have lichen grow, and the lichen eventually starts to die and grow and die and grow and build a little layer of dirt, and then you have moss, and then same thing, die and grow, die and grow, and die and grow, and you have a little bit more soil, and eventually you can start to grow a shrubbery, and then, die and grow, die and grow, die and grow, and eventually you can end up growing an entire forest, right? All based off of that, where that rock was. So that's primary succession, where you're starting essentially with no soil, and then you end up with an entire forest. Well, once that forest gets established, you can see, as it's in this picture, you could have a forest fire, right? That could burn everything to the ground, but it doesn't get rid of the soil, right? So you wouldn't start out, again, with primary succession. You would be starting a secondary succession. So whether it's a forest fire like this, or whether it's a farm that comes and clears this area and does farming for a while, and then the farmer leaves, abandons the farm lot, and then it goes back to being a forest, that would again be secondary succession, because you're starting with soil. Now, if lava came and flowed over this area and hardened, then that would be lava rock over there. And for life to grow off that lava rock, you would be starting again primary succession. So you do need to know the difference between primary and secondary succession. And an old growth forest. An old growth forest is going to be a forest that has never been cut down. It started with its primary succession and went straight through, and has never been disturbed, cut down, modified in that way. So there's some concepts, some terms that are important for you to be aware of. So I want to move on and begin to think about biomes a little bit. Biomes are going to be sort of striated by latitude, and it's going to be really important to think about two major factors for regulating biomes, which are temperature and rain amounts. And so I really like this diagram because it shows Coriolis effect. It shows the 6 different convection cells that are driven by the uneven heat distribution on Earth. So we have at 0 degrees latitude at the equator, you can see tropical rainforest. It's because it's raining a lot there. We have a low pressure system. Air is moving up. And so we're going to have a lot of rain as it's forcing that air up and squeezing it tighter. Rain falls out, and voila, we have tropical rainforest. As you move a little further over, it's not going to get as much rain, so you're going to have a tropical deciduous forest. And then as you move a little further over towards 30 degrees latitude, you're going to get a desert. And if you continue further north, you're going to eventually get to a temperate deciduous forest. And as you move further, you sort of go through these different stages. So the main difference between a forest and a grassland is that a grassland doesn't get as much rain. It's going to be a little bit closer to a desert. And a taiga is going to be a area that is a colder forest, and then you have an Arctic tundra, and that's going to be a cold desert. So these are some of the biomes that you should be familiar with and know about. And what's interesting is rainforests don't have much nutrients in the soil. It's all kept in all the biodiversity that's there. It's the most biodiverse area on Earth. So that's something